Hello and welcome to the Bridge podcast. This is the first of its kind and it dives into vendor management and the relationship between the customer, supplier and the buyer. I'm Nick Francis, your host for this event. I'm the Chief Technology and Marketing Officer for Brooklyn Vendor Assurance and I'm an advisor to the vendor ops community, and it's my privileged job to be able to guide you through this complex world of vendor management and how best to manage customer, buyer, supplier equation, depending on whatever side of the table you sit. Every week we hope to have a host, myself on this occasion, and some amazing guests that will come in and share their expertise and maybe teach a few things and some different approaches of how to challenge or tackle the challenges within this area. This is our very first episode, so we're looking forward to see how it unravels and folds. It's going to be talking about contractual obligations, risk mitigation and risk controls, and ideally to gain transparency of driving best practice through the unmanaged vendor tail. So what that means is the suppliers, the organisations can't really manage that effectively because there's just too many of them. So they just manage the first few or the biggest few. So it's talking about how we can actually get a readout on the tail itself. So for today's episode, or the very first one, as I said, my guests are Jessie Lee and Dr. Tony Fryer. Both are colleagues of mine from Brooklyn Vendor Assurance and both on the front line working with clients and customers on a day-to-day basis, helping them with vendor management. So gents, we've known each other for what is a while now, and finally it's great to get you on our very first podcast and to share your experiences with the audience. I know you've got a lot of experience in the area over the last few years, having worked side by side. But first, probably a few introductions wouldn't go amiss. As I've got the mic, as it were, I'll go first. So, as I said, Chief Technology and Marketing Officer. I'm an engineer by trade from the 90s. I was someone that really liked process re-engineering, big fan of Lean and Six Sigma principles and what they stand for. I really like getting to grips with the business processes, some of the bad ones out there, some that lack definition or are poorly defined or overly defined in some cases. I've held a number of roles in technology, information security and risk management, which are always focused on vendors and suppliers to some degree. So, guys, can you give us a bit about your introduction, your background, what you're working on right now? So start with you, Jessie.
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Nick. I'm Jessie. I'm the CEO of Brooklyn. My background comes from enterprise software and bringing forward a company that looked to expose in a business intelligence kind of way, what is that money doing for the C-suite, especially that tech money for that CIO, that CFO of IT perhaps. And upon exposing it, inevitably the instantaneous next question was, well, how can I get better value for that money for what I'm trying to do for the business here, accelerate the roadmap, et cetera. And the software wasn't built to do that. It was built to expose, but not actually drive better value in the end. And do you know the field of opportunity in those late 2000s, 2010s, early 2010s was most of the time that supply chain. That's where so much money was spent. That's where so much value was really not realized over time due to a repeating pattern of gaps in governance, coverage, activities, responsibilities, etc. And so we got a really good lens on this. And after seeing these patterns over and over and over, myself and some others really couldn't take this anymore and wanted to bring forward something purpose-built to really digitize some of these best practices and root out this economic waste that was pretty much rife up and down the supply chain. And the patterns are different with the very biggest suppliers and the ones that we deal with and do make time to talk with, perhaps sometimes on a frequent basis, and different patterns as you get into the smaller, lower tier suppliers. So, we found that the base reasons why this economic waste kind of manifests is due to some gaps in managing a host of things, contracts, risk on the front line of whoever's facing these suppliers, how we manage the performance of them, how we incentivize and reward innovation, a whole bunch of things. And what was true then has been ever more true every year because there's more and more commoditization, let's say, of services you need to power your business. That's a giant wave that's kind of washed through. Out here in the UK, there's Brexit, or EU generally. Brexit brought this into sharper focus. Then COVID and old ways toppled, and the workforce regularity was sometimes decimated. So the fragility and the need for resilience has just come into the fore. The odd ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal. It's like, with more and more transparency and realization that supply chains are vital for powering every business, and yet rife with risk and fragility. That just, and to say nothing of the demand for sustainability controls and improvements up and down the supply chain so that your business is on a sustainability path. Well, it's the time for some comprehensive purpose-built solution just built to tackle and close down on those gaps that we saw for years and years and years and years. So that's in large part what inspired this and what we're doing. You said, what am I working on? That was a little bit about the tech, but we are building the premier community of practitioners and giving of their best practice and how to handle this and achieve commercial value, maximum value for money over time. And we want to put that in the technology and have each one of these things feed the other. So building that community and really learning from the experts that are out in front, passionate about this, doing something about this that matters. That's what takes up a lot of my focus these days.
Thank you, Jesse. Tony, from your perspective, having come from the same org, Jesse probably stole 90% of your thunder there. You're probably wondering what to talk about when you introduce yourself. But over to you. Same question for you. And what's on your agenda?
Hi, my name's Tony, and thanks, Nick. So I'm the solution consultant for Brooklyn Vendor Assurance, and like Nick, again, a background in engineering by profession. And I've spent over my career speaking to hundreds of procurement, supplier, contract, and many other different types of teams, really understanding what are those key challenges that they're facing, and really encouraging and promoting and kind of empowering best practices across all of their different functional teams in the wider organization when it comes to procurement. And what I've been really focusing on recently is around a couple of things. One is all of the different types of activity that are required as part of best practice to manage suppliers that goes beyond just what it says in the contract. And second, actually being able to get a contract and decompose that into the relevant parts and really spread the message of the contract right across those different functional teams, so that ultimately it's a mutual relationship where they both achieve that value.